Okay, let's dive right into our sources for today. First up, we're looking at something pretty interesting from the Lancet Planetary Health. It's about how climate change might be affecting our health through our gut bacteria.
Yeah, it's not the most obvious connection, is it? But the review argues that beyond the direct impacts we hear about, climate change is messing with our gut microbiota.
How exactly? Is it just about,
Well,
stress?
partly, maybe, but the main focus here is on food. The review points out that higher atmospheric CO2 levels, they're actually changing the nutritional makeup of key crops.
Changing them how?
We're seeing reductions in plant micronutrients, think phosphorus, potassium, zinc, iron, and even protein, in really important staples, wheat, maize, rice.
Wow. So the food itself becomes less nutritious?
Exactly. And that directly impacts the bacteria in our gut because they rely on those nutrients we get from food. It could potentially shift the balance towards microbial strains linked to, well, malnutrition and disease.
And I imagine this isn't affecting everyone equally.
No, definitely not. The review highlights that low and middle-income countries are likely to be hit hardest. Their agriculture is often more vulnerable to climate stressors already.
Makes sense. What about specific communities?
It also mentions indigenous communities.
Mm.
They often have greater gut microbial diversity, which is generally good, but they might be more vulnerable because they rely heavily on local traditional food sources that are directly impacted by environmental changes.
So it's the food changes, but is that the whole story?
So not entirely. The review also touches on changes in water, soil, and other environmental microbes due to climate change. Our gut environment doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? It interacts with the outside world.
Right. We know the gut microbiome is crucial for immunity, metabolism, glucose levels, all that stuff.
Precisely. And existing research, like an analysis mentioned from the BMJ back in 2018, already links lower bacterial diversity in the gut to conditions like atopic eczema, diabetes, and inflammatory bowel disease.
So if climate change reduces that diversity,
It could potentially exacerbate those health issues or increase susceptibility. Though it's complex, one researcher cited, Sachit Anand, points out it's hard to draw a direct cause and effect line because so many other factors are involved: diet, lifestyle, sanitation.
it's rarely simple, is it?
Never. Another expert mentioned, Mr. Ghosh, talks about gut dysbiosis, that imbalance we mentioned. He emphasizes it's not just about having bad bacteria, but also losing the interdependence, the teamwork between the normal microbial strains. This leads to a loss of important metabolic functions.
So we need more data to really understand these interactions between the good bacteria and how climate change fits in.
Definitely. We need to connect the dots better. It highlights the need for really interdisciplinary research and mentions the development of databases, like one called GutBugBD, aiming to help develop therapeutic approaches eventually.
Okay, a really fascinating, if slightly worrying, connection there. Let's shift gears completely now. Our second source takes us into the realm of geopolitics and security. It's an analysis looking at Pakistan and state-supported terror networks.
Yeah, this is a deep dive into what the source calls a complex web of terror networks.
Hmm.
It argues that Pakistan's security establishment has viewed these groups as strategic assets.
That's a strong claim. Does it back that up?
Well, it points to Pakistan's history with the Financial Action Task Force, the FATF. It's been on their gray list multiple times for essentially not doing enough to dismantle terror financing networks.
And where did these networks originate, according to the analysis?
It traces them back to the Soviet-Afghan War in the 80s. The ISI, Pakistan's intelligence agency, was heavily involved in organizing and supporting mujahideen groups then, often with, ironically, U.S. funding and support against the Soviets. The source argues this infrastructure was later repurposed.
Okay, which groups are the main focus here?
The analysis primarily focuses on two: Lashkar-e-Taiba, or Leti, and Jaish-e-Mohammed Jem.
Right, Leti, often linked to attacks in India.
Yes. The source describes its emergence as a proxy force against India, led by Hafiz Mohammed Sayed, who's designated internationally as a terrorist. It details a significant infrastructure headquarters, numerous training camps, a network of madrasas promoting its specific Ali Hadith ideology.
And their capabilities.
The analysis points to their operational sophistication, citing the horrific 2008 Mumbai attacks as a prime example.
Yeah.
It also describes a complex funding structure, alleged ISI support, private donations from the Gulf and diaspora, and even involvement in legitimate businesses.
Okay, and the other group, GEM.
Jaish-e-Mohammed,
Yeah.
founded by Masood Azhar, another designated terrorist. This group, according to the source, is particularly known for its focus on suicide terrorism. It has its own command structure, specialized wings for military operations, recruitment, intelligence gathering.
Similar infrastructure.
Yes, a main headquarters in Bahawalpur, various training camps, including the source notes,
Yeah.
the Balakad complex, which was rebuilt after being targeted. Their ideology is described as Deobandi fundamentalism.
And their operational history.
The analysis links them to major attacks like the 2001 Indian Parliament attack and the 2019 Pulwama bombing in Kashmir. Their financing is also described as diverse, using charity fronts like the Al Ramat Trust, trading companies, alleged protection rackets, real estate, and again, purported ISI funding.
So the source claims pretty direct state support.
It outlines what it calls a three-tiered system of ISI support, providing strategic direction, operational support, and material assistance like funding and weapons. It even cites admissions by former Pakistani leaders like Pervez Musharraf and Nawaz Sharif about past state support for militant groups, and more recent statements by the current foreign minister acknowledging the existence of these issues.
How are these groups funded, more broadly? The analysis mentions charities, but what else?
Besides alleged state funding and charities, it mentions money laundering through Hawala networks, narcotics trafficking, and even, more recently, the use of cryptocurrency to move funds.
And how do they recruit?
Through a dedicated radicalization apparatus, the source says. This includes the madrasa networks, specific curriculum materials, publications, and targeted recruitment drives, sometimes focusing on vulnerable populations.
Have their tactics changed over time?
Yes, the analysis notes an increase in sophistication, particularly after 9/11, and it suggests the Taliban's return to power in Afghanistan has further emboldened some groups operating in the region. The source even mentions a recent attack in Pahalgam in April 2025, linking it to Laiti as evidence of the continuing threat.
So the overall picture painted is one of a persistent, complex threat with deep roots.
That's the core argument. The source emphasizes the danger this poses to regional stability and calls for sustained international pressure on Pakistan to fully dismantle these networks. Remember, we're reporting what the analysis claims here.
Understood. Okay, a very different but equally complex challenge. Let's move to our third source. This one looks forward, focusing on cooperation between India and the United States, specifically in energy and technology.
Yeah, the main driver here, according to the article, is India's push for greater energy security, especially given its growing economy and energy demands. And two key areas highlighted for this partnership are nuclear energy and critical minerals.
Critical minerals, that term comes up a lot lately. Why the focus?
Well, a big part of it is the current market situation. China dominates the processing of many rare earth elements and other critical minerals, which are vital for, well, almost everything: modern renewables, EVs, defense tech, electronics.
So it's about diversifying supply chains.
Exactly. The article argues for the need for something like a critical minerals compact between India and the U.S. to reduce this strategic dependency and build more resilient supply chains away from reliance on a single source that could potentially weaponize that dominance.
How would this cooperation work? Does the article suggest specifics?
It lays out three sort of guiding principles. First, treat critical minerals not just as mining resources, but as a foundational pillar for multiple economic and security sectors.
Okay, a broader view. What's the second?
Pursue cooperation both bilaterally, just India and the U.S., and plurilaterally, involving partners like those in the Quad, Australia, and Japan. This could involve things like joint exploration and processing projects in third countries, collaborating on new processing technologies within the Quad.
Any other ideas under that second principle?
Yeah, it suggests creating a secure digital platform, like an India-U.S. mineral exchange, for sharing data and facilitating trade. Also, co-developing blockchain systems for traceability, so you know where minerals actually come from, and even building joint strategic stockpiles for emergencies.
And the third principle?
Patience, essentially. Recognizing that building mines, processing facilities, all this infrastructure takes a long time. The article suggests thinking in a 20-year horizon, not expecting overnight results. It also mentions needing to invest in the plumbing, like better data sharing protocols and workforce development, maybe under the existing IC framework.
Okay, so critical minerals is one pillar. What about nuclear energy?
Nuclear is framed as crucial for meeting India's surging electricity demand while also trying to hit net zero climate goals. India has a very ambitious target: 100 gigawatts of nuclear capacity by 2047.
Wow, 100 gigawatts. What's the current capacity?
Just over 8 gigawatts currently, so it's a huge leap they're aiming for.
How does the article suggest getting there? U.S. cooperation plays a role.
Yes, but it also points to necessary domestic reforms in India. It highlights three pivotal ones. First, shortening deployment timelines. making the process of approving and building new reactors faster, perhaps through standardized designs.
Makes sense. Second,
Enabling more private sector participation. This means creating conditions where private companies feel confident, investing things like having credible buyers for the power generated, competitive bidding processes, and long-term commitments. This is seen as especially important for deploying small modular reactors, or SMRs.
SMRs, the smaller, potentially factory-built reactors.
Exactly. And the third reform mentioned is amending India's Civil Liability for Nuclear Damage Act from 2010. The current law poses challenges for private investment, particularly from foreign suppliers.
Is there movement on U.S.-India nuclear cooperation already?
The article mentions a positive step: the approval for Holtec International, a U.S. company, to transfer SMR technology to Indian companies. That's seen as an example of the kind of collaboration needed.
Of course, with more nuclear power comes the safety question.
Absolutely. The article stresses that prioritizing nuclear safety is paramount. This includes using advanced technologies for handling waste and for decommissioning plants at the end of their life. This is particularly relevant for SMRs, which might be deployed in areas with limited water resources.
So the overall message for India-U.S. cooperation is a long-term strategic vision.
Yes, building a resilient partnership in these critical energy and technology sectors, recognizing it takes time, investment, and addressing regulatory hurdles, especially given all the global uncertainties right now.